Namaste. Welcome to another episode of Growth Fit interview series brought to you by CustomFit.ai. CustomFit.ai enables marketers and sales professionals to customize the website content without code changes to showcase the right value proposition. It's super simple, just three steps. Install the CustomFit Chrome extension, go to your website and customize the content, and generate shareable links and track the visits. Today, the discussion is going to be all around conversion rate optimization. We have Sumantha Shankaranarayana with us today, and he's co-founder and chief optimizer of Endless ROI, which is purely a CRO and digital advisory. Welcome to our podcast, Sumantha.
Thank you for having me, Ashwin.
Yeah. So I would start with the discussion. Like
Mhm.
you started with conversion optimization 6 years back, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
What was that one thing found very interesting to go for, and how did you move ahead in your journey so far?
So think of statistics, right? I mean, look around how businesses are going online. There are also, industries which are focused on offline and things like that. There's also, boom of omni-channel experiences coming. Think of, how it is going in China, for example, or, how it is going in US or more mature markets in Europe and things like that. So the entire idea was, obviously a dozen, in fact, not even a dozen odd. It's like a billion odd websites which are registered as of today, right?
Mhm.
And out of that, there are, probably close to 100,000 odd websites which are active, right? And all of them are driving insane amounts of traffic, and there are a lot many which is trying to get that mojo running, getting in lots of different types of traffic which is coming in and all of that. And these many are different businesses, and it's all selling to the same common people like me and you, right? From time immemorial, it's people which have been constant. The formats have changed. There have been marketplaces which have been coming and going and all of that. But end of the day, that transaction, which is a two-way street, happens between people, right? So understanding this and getting into biopsychology and all of that, that's where the entire journey started. I had past prior experiences with high level startups and things like that. There's exponential growth there. Uh, in my formative years, I was perhaps the ninth employee, and by the time I quit the organization, there were 100 plus of us in 5 different offices here in India and things like that. I was managing businesses in US and all of that. So great exposure, that data bit which came in, it's a narrative, right? You've got to see the pattern, you've got to understand stuff. And on the other hand, whatever solution that you're creating or working around with needs to check mark that particular problem that the end users are facing, right? Sometimes people might not even know that your solution exists, and for the first time they come and get to know that, okay, wow, that's great. I need such a solution, and let me use it. Similarly for B2B and things like that. So that has been my, I must actually thank one of my mentors, Mr. Krupesh, but for introducing me to conversion rate optimization, because I was big behind data analysis and things like that. So so yeah, that's where the journey started. And prior to that, even without understanding that it's something called as conversion rate optimization, I was doing something like that. Vetting, trying to validate whether a particular hypothesis is working or not. Doing pre and post test analysis and things like that. Not figuratively A/B testing or something like that, but still, banking on user testing, trying to figure out our end users and try to understand like the back of my hand, right? And see what's their problem and what solution that I need to bring to the fore, rather than making a sale, right? So that's how I think all of that started.
That's perfect. I think this is going to be very core to conversion now. I look forward to have a
Yep,
really great discussion.
yep.
I am excited about it. So, would you like to share some wins or failures in your experimentation, your learnings from that, and do's and don'ts? if you want to suggest.
So perfect. So, I think first and foremost, it needs to be ingrained in any practitioner or any business that's actually pursuing conversion rate optimization, right? So this is more about an insight unlocking exercise, right? There could be wins, there could be losses, and all of that, and you've got to see the positive side, or rather, the only side that I see is, if you get wins and things like that, which is great for business, you could scale things up, right? And if there are losses, if your tests are not doing well, then now you understand what is actually not doing well, and where else across the site that particular thing is there on your site, and you might as well
Yeah.
remove that, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
streamlining your end users experience, your customer journey, and things like that, right? And coming to the actual wins, one of my biggest wins was actually on a farm optimization exercise that I was undertaking, and obviously instead of your go-to forms, could be HTML or whatever, type forms or whatever, right? I spent a lot of time on user research, figured out that our audience were 50 plus, right? They struggled with laptops and gadgets and things like that. They couldn't fill in forms easily. So what's the alternative, right? That's where you could test other systems. And what I brought in was a phone-based lead capture thing where people would, they're willing to speak. They can give out their details, and all of that could be captured by a person who does all sorts of data entry. And this was like it blew up like by 500 percentage overnight.
Oh,
So
that's a very
yeah,
like just boom.
yeah, it's just more like there are a couple of hundreds of leads that we used to get a day, and then now we're seeing it in thousands. Right, I'm running, rummaging through database, checking for error reports, and seeing, figuring out whether if it is an anomaly or not. But no, yes, we're capturing that because again it is serving that intent. We removed a particular friction point for end users because we understood them
Mm-hmm.
better, and there was obviously intent to purchase and things like that, fill out lead information and all of that, and that's how in a way we ended up helping them get what they needed, right? So that's I think is one of the good stuff that happened. There's been a lot many instances like that, and it's all the core always lies in user research, how strong your hypothesis is, right? And
Yeah.
obviously that needs to be in a way, how do you tell it? You call it as good as your value proposition is also as, right? One thing is the end user's motivation. Obviously, yes, they want to sign up or purchase a particular product and all of those. And there are again different stages of awareness, 5 different stages that people would quite naturally be at. Somebody who never knows your site, who's come onto your site, somebody who's constantly pestered by a particular problem, right? They know things about the problem, not yet about the solution stage. And there's different solutions in the market. Somebody knows about that, but is perhaps not brand aware, right? And somebody who's particularly aware about your product or your service, knows your name,
Mm-hmm.
and they fall into that category. And somebody who's a repeat buyer or a brand advocate, right, who wants to come again, purchase again and again, recommend your services or product portfolios to their friends and colleagues and things like that. So understanding those levels and breaking that down and forming hypothesis where your large part of the crowd comes from, right? What demographics, understanding pain points over there, what else that they're being shown, right? I mean, obviously it's a free world. People can look for information and things like that, and obviously everybody is being bombarded with a lot many messages, right? Even that's like if you see the entire full spectrum, uh, be it any company, right? You're competing against the likes of Amazon
Mm-hmm.
because they're setting the benchmark. There are deep discounts, there are better user experiences and things like that. And somebody who's used to that particular thing, how is that you could match up to it or perhaps even exceed end users' expectations? What are those engagement stuff or bits that you could imbibe within the journey so that the end user feels that okay, this was a really good experience. So stuff like that, you've got to brainstorm on all of those, and obviously prioritize your hypothesis and all of those. And in terms of losses, what I could tell is, which is a very big problem, is think of, especially if you're part of a large enterprise or something like that. I've had previous experiences in such companies. It's more about getting the buy-in from your key stakeholders, right? Could be your head of product or a VP of product or a head of engineering, head of QA or your CTO or whatever, right? It's more about, you've got to convince these stakeholders as to why experimentation is important, right? You've got to lay it
Yes.
out to them, and it's more like, they could have been top talent, studied in great schools and things like that, but somehow, at least here in India, conversion rate optimization is still pretty much nascent. Not a lot of many folks know it, how it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably if I want to state what markets are good, US is obviously good. Next is Europe. In terms of people understanding the benefits of experimentation, Australia is at nascent stages, and then probably I'll keep India afterwards, right? In terms of
Mm-hmm.
people running experiments day in and day out and things like that.
Awareness.
And if you're starting out experimentation at the start, or if your program is at these nascent stages, then obviously you've got to get that buy-in, and think of a branding exercise, right? There's a cut budget for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Obviously there's not a lot of ROI coming out of there, because you're shooting out messages, trying to get folks entwined into this acquisition mode. So how is that you could bag a particular budget for your experimentation program? How is that you could utilize it and prove ROI behind it, the benefits behind it? Think of sites which have high volume traffic, right? And if you want to
Yeah.
put it succinctly, let's say let's say your traffic is somewhere around 10 million hits a month, right? 10 million
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of good traffic. You could be running a lot of tests and all of these, but how would your key stakeholders know the kind of benefit on all of those? So you want to break that up and explain in such terms that, assume that this entire 10 million traffic is now concise to 1,000 odd numbers, right? And if
Right.
you want to learn something from this particular cohort, what is that you do? Would you keep on testing on this 1,000 odd folks, or would you, in a way, break all of this into batches? Let's say test on first 100 folks and get all sorts of learning, and apply that simultaneously to the 900 odd other folks, because your learning rate,
Mm-hmm.
becomes exponential, right? There's an
Right.
associated thing called as an opportunity cost. So if you're not testing, or if you just let it be, or if you could have been doing something better over there, then you're missing out on factors where you could have understood what are those barriers or friction points on that particular funnel that you're trying to optimize for. Right? I think uh, I wouldn't call it as a loss, but it's unfortunate that not a lot many understand that this is how it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just more about educating that particular piece, getting that buy-in from decision makers, right? Your decision maker could be a CFO, right? Who might
Right.
not understand statistics, or who might not understand A/B testing as such, but you'll have to convince people by stating things like this, bringing in lean principles, testing in batches, and how that is going to accelerate, or rather unlock growth for the organization, and how everybody could contribute, right? So stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously a lot of hard work. There's interesting experiments that you would do and things like that. For some, you'd have high hopes, right? But sometimes you'll have to kill your own babies because it's not performing well, or if it's not beating your baseline conversion rates and things like that. Learn from it, iterate, and obviously go back to user research, figure out the kind of problems that you're trying to solve, and what is that the end user has to say. Yeah. From qualitative, you can apply that to quantitative and get great
Right.
results. So in that sense, I wouldn't say it's a loss. It's always a learning.
That perfectly makes sense, Sumantha. Like you mentioned about websites having millions of traffic, high volume traffic. Uh, but I just wanted to understand what are the biggest hurdles for the visitors to this particular website? What stops them from converting?
It could be anything, right? Again, all of this boils down to their awareness levels, right? And let's say you're a new brand, right? You could be getting a lot of great traffic. Your SEO team is doing a lot of great work. Your marketing team is doing great work. Your PR team is you know pitching in and all of that. But end of the day, let's just take an example. Let's just say uh, you're an online survey tool, right? And I'm trying to look at the market and get into the space. I think this particular space is crowded by 200 dozen odd service providers and things like that. There are a couple of good names that comes to mind, but not all of them would know the other products in this particular space. So let's say if you're not SurveyMonkey and if you're some other brand which is in the space and you're getting good amounts of traffic, and the kind of messaging that goes on your page, right? If you say that I'm the world's best online survey tool, then for me to understand that is a lot hard because there's that disconnect because I'm seeing your site for the very first time. I'm hearing about your brand for the very first time, right? And the kind of message that I get is that you're the world's best, and I cannot believe that, right? So what else could you do, right? For such initial level audience, how is it you could segment and personalize, right? And somebody who's been visiting your site for over 30 days, what is the kind of message that you give them, right? So how is that you could improve trust, right, within the brand that okay they can believe that okay you're perhaps the world's best. You back it up with certain uh, you know social proof as such from your clients. Would it be awards, right? Or should you take this particular approach of what the online survey tool is doing? Perhaps not a lot of people are interested about the company. They're trying to figure out how your company is trying to solve my problem, right? Perhaps they might even say that your company awards might not even matter to me. What is that you're trying to help me with and things like that. So we'll have to focus on core value propositions there and define something which is pretty good. Two-page scripting, which is logical, one after the other. It's more like the end user when they're reading it, they're literally nodding their head in agreement. Okay, this makes sense. Okay, this particular thing makes sense. Okay, let me book a call and see how great their tool is. So I think that's how we need to have a narrative which is laid out across all digital touchpoints. In fact,
So in this case, like personalization or
Mhm.
showing if you know that this particular audience is from this particular geography or this particular industry, then showing them the relevant data would help. And will it create engagement?
For sure, it does, and I mean, not overcomplicate this, right? Even
Hmm.
e- even copy helps. Just textual changes, bringing in those engagement metrics, relating well, does a world of good. Right? For example, let's say you have an end user who's signed up, who's coming here to re-sign again, right? Yeah, we've got their information in sessions and all of those. Based on the day, if it is an afternoon, me saying a message, "Good afternoon, Sumantha," puts a slight smile on my face.
Yeah.
Or let's say if it is not loading properly or whatever. Even the message that goes in there, instead of putting in loading or whatever, you could engage the end user and state that such a slow day. It's
Yeah.
more about those minute micro conversions that'll actually lead to your macro
Being more
conversions.
conversational,
Absolutely,
even
absolutely.
even behind the scene, like
Absolutely,
not
and
just.
yeah, and all of those would I've tested stuff like that versus your regular approaches or whatever is not personalized, and all of these would it helps the end user come from one awareness stage to the other, within the funnel, right? It's more like having a one-to-one conversation rather than standing in the center of a stadium and yelling at 100,000 different art folks. So if you want to be heard and things like that, you got to create such experiences, and the power of copy is pretty great, and it is very malleable, right? I mean, you could keep on trying with different variations, with different connotations, with different approaches, and all of that would feed your engagement engine, and you'd get to know that okay, what actually works, what are the kind of messages which would actually work, and having this information, you could scale it up with videos and things like that. You already know what works, and then go ahead with video productions and things like that, rather than do it the other way around. Because if you come up with videos and things like that, it is hard to re-edit it, you know. And with copy, it's not that difficult. It's within a zap. You could change copy, could change tone, the undertone, based on your brand archetypes and things like that.
Right, right. Now, like according to a survey,
Hmm.
website conversion rates are just 2% on an average, which is even considered as a good number. But if it is poor, like maybe 0.11%, less than 1%. So, what is your step-by-step methodology? One, step two, step three in your experimentation to increase the conversion rate?
It's more like this the statistic is something which is there, right? Everybody says 2%, 3% or whatever, and and it largely differs, even across different brands and things like that. I worked on sites which are already highly converting, right? And on top of that, we're trying to improve conversion rates and things like that. 25 plus, which has been baseline conversion rate, which is great, right? And and everything depends on the context, right? Think of our COVID vaccination. Right? We are close to 1.3 billion odd folks, and 1 billion of them have at least been jabbed the first dose, right? The conversion rate is pretty awesome there.
Yes, yes,
It's
definitely.
because of that motivation, right? Because people want to be safe from
That
COVID-19 and
perfectly
things like
makes
that.
sense.
So, and
Right.
that's how different websites with different motivations. I think motivation is super key. If you're
Yes.
not if you're not aware of the end user's motivations and things like that, you'll struggle big time. I think I think radio took like almost 75 years to reach 50 million odd people, right? And then perhaps Facebook and Twitter and all of them took like close to 9 years to reach 50 million odd people, right? And there's this game which was lit a couple of years ago, which is called Pokemon Go, right? It reached
Okay.
50 million odd users within 19 days. So, if
That's
there's motivation, there is adoption, and that's how you need to focus on. It's more about that product market fit. So how is that well entwined it is so that the end user's perception, they see a lot of value in that, right? With versus the associated cost. So so yeah,
and how do you use personalization to optimize your conversion?
it's more like you know I'd at least think of having two tracks, where one is more let's say iterative, minute changes, smaller copy changes and things like that. And the other approach is largely radical high contrast changes, right? Uh, if somebody is coming in from, I mean, there's like 200 different attributes that I could optimize for, starting from your temperature, your geolocation, your past orders and histories, and there's a gazillion odd factors that I could utilize. And you need to figure out, okay, uh, doing what actually helps the end user, uh, fully understand your message with clarity, right? It's not more like a tactic that you're doing it for the sake of doing it. It's more about, you know, if by doing personalization, whether your value proposition is strongly understood, has it improved clarity, right? Why is that the end user must be purchasing your product or service versus your competitor, right? How is that you could actually fill in all those gaps and let users know that, okay, this is why.
Okay.
If you're going after a particular segment, then what is that you know about them, right? What are their key factors that drives motivation? What are the kind of factors that hinders them to do a particular activity, right? What's the kind of benefit that they're getting from using your product or service, right? What is that your product is helping them accomplish in their day-to-day life?
Right.
So having that context in mind and like you know unlocking over 200 different attributes, you could definitely be more relevant. I think that's also the valid argument to have, because different generations, they see messages differently. uh, you know so based on all of those, you could have something which feels like as if it makes a lot of sense to them, or at least for the reader.
Right. That I think that's completely changed my perspective altogether. Like all these questions that you arose, like you should think in completely on the back end, what's maybe happening on the visitor's mind,
Absolutely,
how you can direct them from this particular point to this particular point. What
absolutely.
what may
It's
be the
yeah, it's
requirement?
yeah, it's more about it's not your optimizing your website or your mobile experience or whatever, right? End of the day, my point of view is you're actually optimizing for their attention, their mind. You're trying to influence a particular decision, and you're keeping them informed.
Yeah, right.
You
Got
know,
it. Got it.
be it at any stage, even if they're not willing to purchase right now. If you circle back to that 2% conversion rate conversation, 98 percentage of your site visitors, they never converted, right? But they did come to your site. Why was that for? Were they comparing it against something else? What was that they're trying to achieve, right? And it's
Right.
it's not it's not always that you've got to focus on the positive side of things. It's also about why something is not happening, right? Or if there's a desired outcome that you need, then perhaps you need to start from there and backtrack your actions and see how is that you could get more people in a particular funnel, solve for their problems. And that's what the job of an experimenter is. You're making life easier, right? It's not that you're
That's
wearing a magic hat or whatever, you're doing fancy stuff on site and all that. Yes, of course, there are instances where such things would be done, because again, call it high contrast or a radical test which is going on, which is entirely different from your base or control variant. But there has to be a strong backing to it. The reason for us to do something like that, and what is that we are trying to achieve, right? Because whatever we do, the new baseline, whatever winner we get, that becomes a new baseline. And we want to continue that conversation step by step, right? And one of
right.
the
Right.
mistakes that practitioners and businesses do is they do it to some extent and stop there, right?
Understood. So that
Yeah.
98% of audience that has come to your website, there is a particular reason they have visited your website. And if they are failing to get converted, that
Yep.
means there's some requirement of that data, or maybe that contextual content on your website
Hmm.
to be in that conversion mode.
Yeah, I mean, think of let's say if you're doing B2B sales, right? And
Hmm.
that means there's a board which is sitting that you need to convince, right? Obviously, everybody is person. Perhaps you have an internal champion there who's backing you, but nonetheless, for that to happen, uh,
Hmm.
perhaps the board members are short on time, and when they come out to your site to look at what you offer and things like that, how would they feel if we ask them from the site that, do you have 10 minutes to look through detailed value propositions of what our site needs to offer?
Hmm.
Versus if you're short on time, here are 3, 4 bullet points that you need to know about us.
Yeah,
Based on that
definitely.
first interaction, you could change the entire site experience. And based on
Hmm.
their time, now we're optimizing.
Uh-huh. Uh, I would go for the next question according to the
Mhm.
uh, relevant to your tools. Like, what are the experimentation tools you recommend or you personally use it, and any favorite one?
I mean, it's not like the tools are not good, right? There's so many again 200 different platforms in experimentation, and some of them are really great. It's about their application, and tool is one part. What you need to understand is, let's say, again hypothetically, let's say I'm using Optimizely and I've got $100,000 as a budget for
Hmm.
that particular thing. I'm perhaps testing for 20 million or traffic or whatever, right? Again, everything hypothetical. The actual numbers would vary. Uh, what you have to think is, uh, you've got this particular tool which is in place, right? And who's going to work with it, right? What's a team setup that you've got there?
Hmm.
How is your engineering support which is coming in? How is your QA support? How is your content? How is your research? How is your design? Right? How is your product management which is going on? The overall project management, how is that your I think the focus needs to be on this particular thing where you're trying to, create a center of excellence, a digital team which is forward looking, which needs to cut across different cross functional teams. It's more about you have to be that string which screws all the pearls together to create that beautiful necklace,
Yeah,
and that you could do it
that
with
makes sense.
yeah, you could do it with tools, right? For sure, there's n number of them, but you need to have that people behind, that methodology behind, and obviously the budget behind. If you're spending $100,000 for a particular tool, my thumb rule is whatever expenditures you have, you limit it to 20%, right? And the remaining
Okay.
80% goes in building your own team because you want to scale things up, hire folks where you don't see, where we're lacking stuff and things like that. You need to have an org structure ready for experimentation and help clear pipelines and things like that. I mean, you could have a tool, right? And you could have great hypothesis. You could even build that test out. And what if, engineering team holds it up? They say that, Sumantha, come back after 4 or 6 months later. Our pipeline is currently full. So what if
We
it does
can't
not go
just do
live? So,
we just can't do anything that time.
so that is where you need to invest more on hiring engineering talent. Be sure
That
on
attitude even matters.
absolutely, and everybody needs to be learning, be willing to contribute and things like that.
So Samantha, I actually didn't want to end this up, but because of the time, I we would have to
Right,
wrap the session, but
right.
with the last one advice from you to the CRO folks and marketing folks out there.
I mean, strong statement there. It's not a word of advice or something like that, but the honest ask is obviously, you know, uh, you could be anywhere, right? -1 to 0 level, 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000. Any of these companies where you set in, it's more about, across all different industries and things like that. You have to ensure, um, you know, that the mindset for testing is there. You've got to
Hmm.
cultivate that, so that everything gets scaled up sooner rather than later. So in order for you to do something like that, you've got to explain certain complex things and explain statistics.
Have to have that motivation in
Yeah, yeah,
yourself
yeah,
to
well,
just make it.
yeah, and let's say out of 10 tests that you run, perhaps 8 of them is just giving you learnings only, not winners.
Yeah,
So
but
you've got to inculcate, take all of that in stride, face it, right? And obviously it's a very exciting field. You're constantly learning. You're like on this infinite learning curve,
I
and
think that will.
enjoy that, right? I think enjoy that process. It's more like you keep going, you keep facing blockers and things like that, but there's going to be a way where you're going to breach all of that and figure out that experimentation is such a powerful mode for brands to utilize.
That's
So,
true.
so yeah, keep at it, keep at it.
Yeah, even those learnings, like they'll help you out in long run. Like you know what not to do.
Yeah, yeah, and
Good.
you could remove all of those, jad se ukad ke fekna. So
Yes.
whatever is not working, then you could actually, you know, that's again a save for the business, right? You've identified what's not working and you've actually
Hmm.
eliminated that. So that's a learning that you should be happy about rather than, let's say, uh, whatever uplift that you're trying to bring. And obviously, it keeps on improving. It's going to impact your bottom line. The revenues would go up. You've got a full spectrum to optimize, right? There's it's not only acquisition, there's engagement, there's monetization, your checkout, your return visitors. It's exciting and different channels, right? Organic, paid, different marketplaces as well. So it's great to be at this level, at this nexus, so to speak, where you could see where what's happening, where what's moving, and how you could potentially help your business grow.
Thanks, Sumantha. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
I'd like
my
to
pleasure.
wrap the session. Actually, don't want to, but yes,
Right on.
thank, thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.